From the Ticats Audio Network, this is Ticats Today with Brayden Neville.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Ticats Today for this Friday, October 20th, 2023. And joining me on today's show is Brian Simmons. Brian, the Ticats are on that final bye week of the season. We don't have a game to talk about, but what do you think this team should be doing during this bye week as they prepare for this big stretch here coming up?
Well, you know, Brayden, this is a very long season, and I can imagine a lot of guys are probably lumped up because I always say after day one of training camp, you know, usually 80% of the team they hurt something sore. So at this time of year, you know, I mean, when I played, I always felt like at this time of the season, yeah, there are things you can get better at physically, but it's like the muscle memory has been so programmed in your body throughout the season. It's like you really got to take advantage of the mental part of the game. You know, just going back, looking over film, and just resting and taking advantage, you know, of the time that you get off. Because it's kind of nice to have, you know, a bye week, you know, right before you got one more game and into the playoffs.
And in your experience at this point of the season, how's the body feeling, especially with you when you were playing on that O-line? You're taking a lot of contact game in and game out, but what was the body feeling like for you as you approached the playoffs?
Oh, it wasn't feeling pleasant. I tell you that. There was a couple seasons, and it's just crazy. I can go out there and play football at one of the highest leagues in this world, but I couldn't even do 3 push-ups, like because my shoulders were so shot. It was like you just sore from the banging and stuff like that. So, and then as the weather gets a little colder, you know, those hits they just seem to get a little bit deeper to the core.
Yeah, and I can imagine. And I mean, when you're doing a push-up, it's a little different than, say, if I'm doing a push-up. There's a little more weight there. You're a little bit a bigger guy than most. But Brian, they have the Montreal Alouettes, the final game of the season, and then they have them in the playoffs. But in this final game of the season, how do they approach this? How do you think they should go about playing who they play?
Oh man, it's tough. It's tough because it's like, it's tough, Brady, because it's like, if you choose not to play someone, you know, that's 2 weeks on the shelf, you know.
Yeah.
So it's like it's such a long stretch. I mean, I would imagine that they might, you know, play some guys for a half, a quarter, or something like that. That's what I would think at least. But I would be surprised at some of the guys. Like, okay, I can see like Butler, I could see you not playing him, you know,
Yeah.
because I
Yeah.
feel like he's a guy that I just feel extremely confident that he's going to be showing up on game day. You know, whereas like there's some other guys that, you know, that really might be needed more as well too. So I mean, I don't know. I'm curious to see how they play it out.
There's guys who set goals for themselves throughout the season, and there's guys in the races for certain categories, like receiving yards. You got Tim White and James Butler wants to finish strong, and he said he has goals and expectations. But is it kind of time to put those goals in the back burner and just kind of think, okay, let's keep my body right for the playoffs here, and maybe forget about maybe those categories you were trying to hit that you're maybe so close to in this final game of the season?
I mean, in my opinion, I can understand where they're coming from. I mean, as an offensive lineman, you don't really see those kind of goals
Yeah.
really put into contracts, but I can understand it. I mean, me personally, if I think it's something that could be reached within the first quarter or something, yeah, I understand. But if it's like you got to have like an amazing game to reach that feat, I just don't think it's worth it. I mean, you have to remember, you know, what the main purpose is why you're here, you know, is
Yes.
to get that cup.
Yeah, and so I have a feeling we'll see a lot more of Taylor Powell in this final game of the season. But heading into the
Mhm.
playoffs, they've been doing this 2 quarterback system, trying to get Bo ready to play. But do you think it's time for one quarterback to step up and be the guy the entire time when it comes time for the playoffs?
I mean, me personally, if it was up to me, it would be I would make that choice. You
Mm-hmm.
know, to have one quarterback. I don't look down at what they've been doing because I think with the kind of injuries we've experienced this season, it's like it's such a great thing to have that next guy ready.
Yep.
And I feel like with what they've been doing, it's like, you know, we have 3 quarterbacks, you know, that can make plays and get the job done.
Mm-hmm.
So I would be surprised if they do the multi QB thing, you know, in the playoff game. But
Yeah.
that would be my choice. If it were up to me, I would just have one QB.
And if the quarterback, I mean, assuming that it's Bo Levi Mitchell starting that playoff game, and I think that's what they're hoping for. How big is it to have a guy like him and the experience he has in these playoffs and have a quarterback who's been there and he's won Grey Cups as your starter?
Oh, it's I mean, when you look at it, even amongst the quarterbacks in this league, you can say Bowles probably had. With the exception of Zach lately, Bowles had more postseason success than most of these guys is
Yeah.
playing. So it's like this is not something that he's foreign to. Like he's been here before, he's done that, and you can just see the poise he has when he comes in to play. You can just tell. Like if I knew nothing about Hamilton Tiger Cat, CFL or whatever, if I turn the TV on, I see him play, I'll be like, okay, this guy's done this
Yeah.
before. You can just see it. So it's very important to have that. And players feed off of that. It's sometimes it matters who's the commander in chief in there. Like if he doesn't have his guys with him, it can affect the play of the other guys.
In your experience, Brian, who is the quarterback that you've played with that just flips another switch come playoff time? Because I know you've played with a lot of great quarterbacks.
I have. Honestly, I would have to say Smiling Hank. I'd say Henry Birds. He was just. He was a gunslinger, so he gonna take chances. But when I tell you this guy is playing to win every game and win every game big, that's one thing I'll say about him. Like he really was a guy that could step it up in those games.
And he was a fun guy to watch in the playoffs, and that's one of those people that is a successful quarterback and one of the greatest of all time. I want to transition a little bit here. All-Star voting is happening, so there's something that people are excited about. A lot of players, I feel like, on the Ticats could be All-Stars this season. Who do you think has the best shot on the Ticats on offense to be an All-Star?
On offense, let's see. It's going to be. I will say this. It depends on how many running backs they're carrying. Like if they're carrying one, it's going to be tough for them to choose between Butler and AJ because they both had great seasons. But if they're choosing two, those are the two for sure, in my opinion. In the East at least. But I would say honestly, out of everyone on the offense, the two people I would say that's for sure, I'd have to say Tim White. I'd be surprised if he doesn't make it. And I think this is, and it's not favoritism, but I think if Reverend Bird doesn't make it, like to me, that's the guy that I think he's playing the best offensive line in the league personally right now.
If you had to pick the best player on offense, I'm putting you on the spot big time here, but who's your star of the Ticats offense this season? I know there's so many guys to choose from, but I'll give you one. I'll maybe give you two guys.
Man, that's hard. Okay, if you can say two, oh, that's tough, man. No, it's because I really want to say three, but
Yeah. Okay, I'll give you three. I'll give you three.
if I say three, is Butler, Tim White, and Revenberg. That's why I have to say that. And
For sure.
I know the average fan, they probably wouldn't understand, the importance of Revenberg being in that list, but those other two guys wouldn't be able to make plays if he wasn't doing his job.
Exactly. And if anyone understands the importance of O-lineman, it's you, Brian. So
Yeah.
on defense, who are your guys?
Defensively, oh man, I can't. I'm blank with names right now. Defensive tackle on 44.
Yeah.
I feel like he's had a really solid season. His presence is felt. Also, I feel like Thurman had a good season as well too.
Yep.
And
Stav, I think, is another big guy too.
Yes, I was getting ready to go. Yeah, and safety. Leonard has played well. Honestly, man, it's a bunch of guys you could choose from on the defensive side of the ball as well.
And I am putting you on the spot here, Brian. So I apologize for that. But Scott Milanovich has come in and he's been one of the biggest contributors to the success of this team and this offense in the second half of the season. But what has he done to this offense to make it so successful here in this second half?
Well, in my opinion, and it's such an odd spot to be in because, I love who the former offensive coordinator was.
Yeah,
I played for him.
Of course, yeah.
But I will say just the change that I see looking at it from just, breaking it down from what I see, I think he's really done a good job of realizing what the team's strengths and weaknesses are.
Mm-hmm.
And he's used them to the best of his advantage. He's really tried to simplify the game down. It looked like the players are just playing, and it doesn't like they're thinking as much. So I think he's done a good job because honestly, you do have to think in this game. But as a coach, I feel like you should make it. I always say the best coaches, they provide you cheat sheets to the game.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, this is what we have. Oh, okay. Where you're not out there thinking, you can just play.
Yep.
So to me, I think that's the greatest thing he's done for them, and he's done a great job.
It's been exciting to watch it, and Tommy was a great offensive coordinator. He still is, and I'm sure he'll be in this league again. We'll see him again soon. you're going up against Montreal. We've seen Cody Fajardo and what he can do against this Ticats team, but it's been a long time since these two teams have played. What do
Yeah.
you need to do defensively to throw him off his game in these next? Well, we probably won't see much of him in the final week of the season, but looking ahead to the
Yeah.
playoffs, what do they need to do to finally beat this Montreal team and a team that's really shocked a lot of people with how good they've been this season?
They got to really, continue to just apply pressure and turn the ball over. And one thing about this game, the playoff game, I'll say, they don't keep it close because
Mm-hmm.
Montreal's one of those teams. You just let them hang around and hang around. It'll come down to some play at the end of the game and whatnot. Like, don't make it close. Just we need a fast start, which I feel like we have been starting fast lately.
Yep.
It's been faster start, so we just got to continue that. And one thing I always say to myself as a player, Brayden, is I know it's a playoff game, but at the end of the day, it's just another game.
Yep.
So it's like sometimes I see guys psych themselves up too much and make it bigger than what it is. I understand, what's on the line, but you have to go out there and play the game. Don't let it get to you too much.
You've played in Montreal, Brian. What is
Mhm.
the atmosphere like for these playoffs games in Montreal? What's that crowd
Oh,
like?
it's gonna be a hostile crowd. One thing I'll say about that city is when they're winning, they're really behind you. And honestly, my favorite game of all time I played was actually my rookie. It was a rookie playoff game. It was, 2011. We was playing in the Olympic Stadium against Montreal, and it was a high scoring game. I think it went a double overtime or something. It was like Rocky IV, man. Just left, right, back and forth. One of the most fun games I ever played. But the crowd was just so rowdy, and I learned, my rookie season in Montreal, they have a fiery crowd, so it's gonna be a great atmosphere.
Yeah, and they get to see the Ticats twice in a row, so it's going to be exciting to see. I'm going to completely switch up here. We're 1 month away from the Grey Cup, and all football aside, there's also a ton of other stuff going on around the Grey Cup. But there's a few performers. There's Dirty Nil just announced. We have Carrie Underwood, and we have Green
Mhm.
Day performing at halftime. Brian, who would you want to see the most? Those are all such great artists. But out of those three, who are you most excited for?
I'll sit here and say this. I love Carrie Underwood's voice. I think she has a very powerful voice. But I would say, even though she is associated with football, the Sunday night song,
Yep.
it's like when I think of football, her voice is the first come to mind. And I just think I don't want to be lulled to sleep. But honestly, I probably would pick Green Day out of all of those groups. I
Yeah.
would.
And
Yeah.
the funny thing is, Brian, Green Day was the first CD I ever purchased when I think I was like 11 or 12 years old, and that was the only CD I had, and I used to listen to it on repeat. I'm pretty sure I drove my parents crazy listening to Green Day. If you will,
Yeah.
Brian, to close out this show, what do you think this Ticats team needs to do in this next week, getting ready for this final game of the season?
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't want to say they should treat this like a preseason game. I mean, ultimately, you
Yeah.
want to win because it does send a message. Whoever loses this game is going to come in the next week just feeling not as confident as the team who won. So ultimately, I would like to win the game, but at the same time, guys, play smart. Make business decisions while you're out there. And who's ever had, let's say, for the guys who hasn't played at all this season, who get a chance to play. In that situation, I've never been in that situation, but if I was, I would tell myself, hey, this is another chance to
Yep.
get evaluated, to show these guys what I can do. So, if they have that kind of energy, and just spread that amongst the team, I think it'll be fine. So that's what my mindset would be, Brayden. Honestly, just going in, playing solid football, and the number one goal is winning, and then, trying not to get hurt at the same time.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing. It's nice that they have this little break here because there's been a ton of injuries on this on that secondary and all over this Ticats roster. So good for guys to heal up again. But Brian, I appreciate you coming on the show today. Next week we'll have a game to talk about. Might not be a game where we see a lot of
Yeah.
starters, but we'll have a game. But once again, Brian Simmons, as always, pleasure to have you on the show today.
Likewise, Brayden, man. Take care.